Wire baskets come in all shapes and sizes. This one is 35 centimetres in diameter and 40 centimetres deep. You can buy fabric liners that will slip easily inside the wire frame, but I'm going to use moss to make a lining as I personally prefer the more natural look. To make things a little bit easier, unhook a chain if you can. This basket has a flat bottom, so it will sit level on this surface. If you have a round bottomed basket, wedge it into an empty pot and that will help stabilise it. Sphagnum moss is available from garden centres and comes tightly packed in its packaging. Use a good quality compost, one marked suitable for baskets and containers if possible. And have your selection of basket plants to hand. Some upright, some bushy and some trailing. Remember, the plant labels will help you choose your thrillers, fillers and spillers. Along with this upright daisy-like plant, I've chosen this semi-cascading bushy type to be my filler, and several varieties here that will trail down from the basket sides. So, the moss acts as the liner, holding the compost intact and to a greater extent preventing water from pouring out, taking the compost and plants with it. The moss is packed tightly, so stretch it out into manageable pieces and lay it and pack it firmly to give an almost impermeable base on which to start building the moss walls. Again, tear and separate the moss, then overlay and pack to make the wall to hold in the compost. Imagine it's a bird's nest you're making. I'm now putting the compost into the well of moss, as the basket is going to be constructed and planted in layers. Press the compost in firmly. I have 3 lots of 3 trailing varieties of plant that I'll layer up to cascade down the sides of the basket. Hold the plant's greenery gently and squeeze the pot. The root ball should slide out. Make sure the plant's compost is moist before planting. This plant has some woody growth, so I'll scrape it off. Now, we have to have the roots on the inside and the green part on the outside. The easier way is to carefully gather the greenery together and feed it gently through a wire gap, leaving the root ball unscathed, resting on the layer of compost. So, same again. And as I have 3, I will plant them spread evenly around the basket. We now have to secure these plants in place by tucking more moss tightly around the neck of the plant. This is the area where the roots meet the stem. Packing the moss tightly ensures no water and compost can pour out and gives the moss basket a tidy and complete look while the plants are continuing to develop fully. Once the plants are secured, continue building the moss up to continue with the wall. Now add in more compost to bring it level with the moss wall. Firm it in, and this also helps keep the moss tight and intact also. Now for my next 3 trailing plants. I'm going to check where I want to place them so that they each have their own basket space to cover initially before they merge as one. As before, gently feed the greenery through, leaving the root ball resting on top of the compost. And continue like this, tucking more moss around the plant's necks, building more wall before placing the next layer of plants. This activity could be made into a production line, identifying tasks suitable to individuals, but with the team effort resulting in a complete, beautiful basket. Tasks could include the tearing up of the moss, delumping the compost, removing labels and plants from their pots, packing the compost into the basket, and so on. Almost at the top now. Don't fill this last layer of compost level with the moss wall. We need to leave space for the remaining plant's root balls to fit in, and we can add more compost later if needed. I'm putting in the filler plants that will bush out and cascade a wee bit over the edge, blurring the line where the trailing plants will start. And now for the 3 upright plants to give height to the overall display. This is a sprawling trailing plant that I'm planting in the centre of my 3 uprights. These upright plant stems can be a little bit bare at the bottom, so I'm ensuring there is good cover all over the basket. The compost level is still lower than that of the moss wall, which is what I want, as I need to have an area that I can water into on top of the compost without the water immediately spilling over the moss wall. I'm adding a little compost into a few gaps, but still leaving a decent void to water into. Firmly composting as I go and checking my moss wall. Oh, wee soft spot here. I'll pack it a wee bit more. Okay, I'm happy with this. I'm going to rehook my chain now. Make sure it's unfangled before you rehook it, or it will hang unevenly from the bracket. Use a rose spray on the watering can to give the basket a thorough dousing of water. I have planted an almost ridiculous amount of plants into a very small volume of compost here, and all of these plants require copious amounts of water to develop and flower successfully over the coming months. Therefore, it's vitally important that the basket is kept moist at all times. Hanging baskets dry out so quickly as they are open to the drying wind and sunlight. Even on a rainy day, a well-stocked hanging basket requires watering because the foliage acts as an umbrella and rainwater cascades over the leaves, falling off the basket and not into the compost. So remember, when watering, always aim the watering can spout into the basket and onto the compost.